Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us in today's video. We've got an awesome guest, and selfishly, I want to say I am super excited to talk to him. He's the senior team reporter for the Kansas City Chiefs, Matt McMullen. He's also the co-host of the Defending the Kingdom podcast alongside the legendary Mitch Holthus. Matt, thank you so much for taking some time, man.
Yeah, of course, man. Anything for you. Always happy to be here. It's Groundhog Day up here in St. Joseph, where it was practice day number 10 today, but I've completely lost track of what day of the week it is. So this was a welcome break from my normal grind.
That is fitting on Groundhog Day either way. But I do want to start off by asking, the channel covers mostly K-State specific stuff. So I want to start off with a couple of K-State guys in both Echo Boydo and Felix, Chiefs first round pick. Can I get an update on how those guys are doing through training camp so far?
Yeah, for sure. Well, with Echo, he was one of the guys that really surprised me in June because he wasn't in that first round of UDFAs. You know, a lot of guys sign immediately after the draft. He wasn't in that group. He attended rookie minicamp as a tryout player and earned a contract from the Chiefs among like 50 other tryout players. He stood out. So I have a lot of respect for him just for that. And he's looked good. I mean, throughout mandatory minicamp, he really looked the part. He's looked good in this training camp as well. So I'm looking forward to see what he can do over the next 2 weeks or so and see maybe if he doesn't land a spot on the roster, maybe the practice squad, and who knows what can happen later in the season. We've seen guys time and time again who don't make the team initially. They land on the practice squad and get called up in like week 5 or 6 and end up playing 12 games. So we'll see what happens with him, but he certainly looks the part. And then Felix, he was banged up in OTAs and I think mandatory minicamp, just dealing with some injuries that were sustained while he was at K-State, but he appears to be fully healthy now and rotating in there with the guys. And he's looked really good as well. Looks like a first round pick, and looking forward to seeing what he can do here in the preseason.
That is awesome to see. I know as a K-State fan, I was watching the draft all night and just holding out that sliver of a hope for, like in your case, Missouri grad, he had Nick Bolton come to the Chiefs, and now he's had so much success there with the Chiefs. So I imagine it's kind of that same feeling where it's like you get to see someone go from your college to your team in the NFL and just, thrive on all fronts. So I'm excited for both players. Hopefully Echo can continue to compete. I know the undrafted free agent life is kind of tough to get into a roster spot, but he's definitely that type of character that he could get in that spot. And touching on the local guys, we mentioned Nick Bolton, we've mentioned both K-State guys. It feels like, and maybe it's just a recency bias for me a little bit, but like the last 5 or 10 years, there's been almost an increased focus on drafting local or picking up players in the area, even if it's just bringing them out to training camp, rookie minicamp, whatever the case is. Is that something that you've noticed that trend under Andy Reid, or is that more of just the talent level of players in Kansas, Missouri, that area is continuing to grow?
Yeah, I think it's a testament to the local schools and how the talent here locally has really, I think, increased over the last several years. All 3 programs, if you're talking about Mizzou, K-State, and KU. There's a KU player on the roster right now too, and Daniel Wise, an interior defensive tackle. So again, I think it's a testament to just the schools in this area and the talent in this area. I think Coach Reid and Brett Veach are going to scour the world to find the very best players. I don't think it matters too much to them if they're from this area or not, but if they are, that's great. It was an amazing story for Felix being drafted in the first round in Kansas City to close out the draft. I mean, he wasn't invited to it, but he was in the crowd earlier in the evening. I mean, if that was a movie, it wouldn't be realistic, right? And it was so cool that that's how it played out. But I think it's mostly coincidence that the Chiefs are ending up with these local players. It's just a testament to the area and how the talent in this area has really improved in recent years, I think.
For sure. I agree with that. I think one thing I think is interesting is from an outside perspective, you're living the life here. You're covering a team I imagine you rooted for growing up, going from Kansas, Missouri area as a kid, and now you're kind of stepping into that role with the Chiefs. And I mean, you've been everywhere. Traveled recently, I believe, to Germany, Frankfurt, if I'm not mistaken.
I sure did.
Could you just reflect on your journey and everything that's gotten you to this point? I mean, not to give you a full 60 minutes breakdown here, but as much as you want to go into detail.
Yeah, man, it's pretty crazy. I was a Chiefs fan growing up. I've been a Chiefs fan my whole life. I remember watching the 2003 team. That's the first squad I really remember watching, and just fell in love with football, watching Trent Green and Dante Hall and Tony Gonzalez and Priest Holmes and all those guys. From that moment on, I was in. And I wanted to work in sports really since I was like 12 years old, but I never thought I would actually get to work for my favorite team. I thought I would have the Chiefs and they were my hobby over here, and then I would work it somewhere else in sports. That's just the way it goes. And at first it looked like it was going to go that way. I kind of bounced around the country working for a few different teams, but as fate would have it, I ended up back here in Kansas City. I've been working for the Chiefs full time since 2017 now. I was an intern in 2016, and that coincides with the run of division titles that we have going on right now, where we've won 7 straight division titles. I've been here for all of them. I can't believe it. But it really is just a dream come true for me to represent the Chiefs, again, my favorite team, in all these different ways. The Chiefs have given me a great opportunity to really grow in my career here and kind of expand my role over time. And Germany is a great example of that. Obviously, the Chiefs are trying to expand internationally, and Germany is right in the middle of that expansion plan. And we're playing there, as you know, in November against the Dolphins. And in May, they sent me out there on kind of an early preliminary trip to try to cultivate a little bit of fandom before the game happens in November. I hosted a big Chiefs party, basically, with Dante Hall in downtown Frankfurt for about 200 German Chiefs fans. I didn't know what to expect, but I was frankly blown away by it. The energy and the passion, the excitement these people have for Chiefs football is so cool. And it made me feel so honored to bring something that these people care about and that they're so interested in to them where they are from. And that was just honestly a highlight of my career. So I can't wait to see what it's like in November when we play the Dolphins. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. And, just being a Chiefs fan at heart, I know how special and how important this team is to people. And to represent it around the world now, I frankly still can't quite believe it.
That's awesome. And I feel like if you had to pick a Chiefs alum to host a party in Germany with, I feel like Dante Hall is a great selection on that front. But Ty, throwing up the X all day, X factor, man. Now jumping in more specific to this summer, there's been a lot of players that have popped up here and there of guys that are just flashing, whether it be late round draft picks or, undrafted guys that are competing for a roster spot. Is there a name? And I know a lot of people have mentioned Eric Prince and a couple of other people on the roster. Is there a name or two you're looking forward to seeing this fall that's really going to potentially make that jump into either a starting role or a major contributing role?
Well, Eric Prince, I think, is the first guy on that list. He kind of fits in that group of players who went undrafted, might be a little under the radar, but have a real shot at contributing this year. I think the first area he could earn a role is as a kick returner. And Coach Tobe has even referenced this. He says that right now, Eric probably is that guy. Now he has to hold on to that role through the rest of camp and through the preseason, but he has a great shot at being the Chiefs kick returner this year. He looks a lot like Niall Davis. They have the same body type. They wear the same number, and he would basically hold the same role here with the Chiefs, being, of course, a running back, but also a kickoff return man. So I think Eric Prince is definitely a guy to know. Another is wide receiver Nico Remigio from Fresno State. He also played at Cal before Fresno State. Really stocky, strong, but also quick receiver. A slot receiver during his time in college, but had a huge season last year at Fresno State. He had 2 punt return touchdowns as well. And he's been really good in this camp with his limited opportunities. The first part of camp, the first few days before all the veterans get here, is just quarterbacks and rookies. And he flashed throughout that time when he had kind of an extended look. And even during the time when veterans have been here, he's been really solid. So we'll see what he does in the preseason. But Nico Remigio is a guy to know for sure as well.
Well, I think those are going to be 2 guys to follow for sure. And I think if you ask, if you polled Chiefs fans, if you had an opportunity to get another Niall Davis type player to affect the game, maybe obviously behind Isaiah Pacheco at the moment, to affect the game, I think most Chiefs fans would sign up for that in a heartbeat. The next thing I want to ask about is the group of second-year players. There's been the narrative that the Chiefs started seemingly more than everybody ever in terms of rookies in the Super Bowl, in the playoffs, regular season, whatever that stat continues to grow. Is there anyone specifically, or if you want to talk to the group of second-year guys as a whole, whether it be George Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie, or any of the guys on the defense that have really stepped out in training camp as a second-year guy saying, okay, now there's different guys leaving. I have to step up a little bit my leadership in terms of, being vocal and communicative?
Well, I could do a full hour-long podcast on this subject because I think this is one of the storylines of the season. You're so right that if you take out just 1 or 2 of those rookies from last year, the Chiefs don't go to the Super Bowl. I mean, those guys were pivotal. And what an amazing thing for their growth to contribute to a championship team as a rookie. Now, the next thing for them is to keep that process going and to be even better this year, right? Because they're veterans now. They're not rookies anymore. And I've really seen that throughout camp. George Karlaftis has been dominant in camp. He's been awesome. Very excited to see what he can do this year. Sky Moore has had a huge volume of stuff thrown at him, and he's been really good as well. Justin Watson the other day said that Sky was outstanding during spring practices, and I agree with that. He's just really carrying the momentum that he built in the AFC title game and in the Super Bowl, where he made two of the biggest plays of his life. He's carrying that momentum here into the offseason training program and into training camp. And he just looks the part. I'm just super encouraged by what I've seen from Sky Moore, and I think he takes a big jump this season. But then the second-year defensive backs, that's what I'm really, really excited about. We called them the Fab Five last year, of course, being Trent McDuffie, Brian Cook, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, and Najee Johnson. It's really a huge bummer because Najee was having an amazing spring and a really nice camp. And I think he was going to have a decent role on this team towards ACL a few days ago, obviously out for the season. It's really sad, but I know he'll be back and better than ever next year, hopefully. The other four guys, though, are still all looking really good. They're healthy. And I think ready to take a leap. Trent McDuffie is going to be, over the course of his career, one of the best corners in the NFL. I truly believe that. He really flashed last year when he's on the field, only got better and better, and he's been great during this camp. Brian Cook is consistently lauded as one of the most vocal players on this team. He's just like a field general on the back end at safety and also making plays every single day. And Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams continue to make plays. I do a 5 observations article after every practice, and I take little notes on my phone as I'm watching things. And every single day, it's either Joshua Williams had a great PBU or Jalen Watson had a great PBU. So those guys are making plays every day as well. So they got to keep it going. They got to maintain this momentum. But I truly believe on paper, this is going to be the best defense that the Chiefs have had in the Patrick Mahomes era. And a lot of that is because of these rookies and how they performed last year. They're looking good so far, but they got to keep it going and take that next step. But if they can, could be a very special season for the Chiefs here defensively.
Well, I absolutely love the sound of that. That sounds incredible, and I think I'd sign up for that any day. I am curious, and this might not be the sexiest question at face value, but the Chiefs have they've done a lot of good with their scanning and scouting for backup quarterbacks through the years. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes getting banged up in both runs of the Super Bowl, where you had Matt Moore step in and contribute some big minutes, then also Chad Henne. What have you seen out of Blaine Gabbert, another guy from your alma mater? How has he been through training camp, and how's that looked so far for him getting used to the team?
He's been good. I liked that signing for the Chiefs because, of course, Chad Henne retiring. On the surface, people might not realize what an impact Chad Henne had, but he was like an extension of the coaching staff and a guy with just such a wealth of knowledge. He'd played so many years in the NFL and could just add his thoughts to that quarterback room. That's a big deal, losing that. And adding Blaine Gabbert into the fold is an equally big deal because here's someone that played under Tom Brady for 3 years in Tampa Bay. We all think that Patrick Mahomes has a chance to be one of, if not the greatest quarterback of all time. Who better to talk to than a guy in Blaine Gabbert who was with Tom Brady for 3 years. So I think just having his insight is beneficial. And also he's just looked good as a player. I mean, he's a former first-round pick, a former 5-star recruit to Mizzou. He's obviously a good football player. He had some tough circumstances throughout his career, a lot of different offensive coordinators, a lot of teams that just weren't very good around him. But one article I read about Blaine when we first signed him that was written a couple years ago talked about how he finally felt comfortable in Tampa Bay's system. He felt comfortable backing up Tom Brady, and he could really just flourish as a player. And I think that has continued, even though he's in a new system now in Kansas City. I think he has a confidence about him. He knows his role. He knows what's expected of him. And he can just be a guy who can help Patrick Mahomes in any way that he can. And Mitch and I always joke around the true test for a Chiefs backup quarterback is, can you lead a 98-yard drive in the divisional round of the playoffs? I don't know about that just yet, but at least what I've seen so far in camp, if the Chiefs did have to go to Blaine at some point in the year, hopefully they don't. But if they do, I'm confident he would execute the offense, keep the Chiefs in any game.
That's awesome to hear for sure. And Andy Reid's also had some success with former Missouri quarterbacks, Chase Daniel backing up Alex Smith for a number of years. I feel like the backup quarterback role has definitely been, obviously it was super apparent last year and even in the first postseason run. It's been one of our most important positions to maintain. I mean, you have a $500 million quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. You've got to have some extra insurance just in case you miss him for a game or two. But transitioning a little bit more, one thing I noticed, and I'll speak to it lightly a little bit. Travis Kelce the last couple of days got into a couple of interactions with different defenders. It's been a little bit chippy on the field. Is there like an increased intensity this year under pressure to repeat, or is it just high competitive dudes ready to go at it at all times?
I think it's just highly competitive dudes and it's hot and it's the middle of training camp. And one thing you have to understand is the way the offseason training program works is the guys can't practice in pads all offseason. I mean, all the OTAs, mandatory minicamp, all that stuff, they're in shorts and shirts, and it's all kind of the mental aspect of the game. Well, they're currently in a stretch here where they've had 5 padded practices in 7 days. We've been a little bit fortunate with the weather the last few days. It's been a little rainy and cooler, but usually it's really hot up here. These practices are 2 hours and 25 minutes long, and it's competitive, and it's lots of guys trying to make the team. So I don't think it's necessarily a pressure thing. I think it's just sometimes, if it gets hot and guys are competing, things can happen. But Coach Reed addressed that. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. And I think it's just a matter of guys being competitive.
And then one final question I want to ask you, jumping back to college things. Now, I don't know how much you've kept up with college football. I assume that kind of doesn't ever leave you, especially in big college football conferences. There's been conference realignment conversations and rumors every single day. And I don't know how much you've caught of that, but obviously you have Colorado heading back to the Big 12 Conference in 2024, leaving the Pac-12, and rumors of basically everyone leaving the Pac-12 going on. As a Mizzou guy, how do you feel in conference realignment? Missouri hasn't really popped their name into any of the, return to the Big 12 narrative or stay out of the way narrative. Do you have any opinions on what conference realignment has done for college sports and what you think on that front?
Well, that's an interesting question. I was at Mizzou when we moved to the SEC, and it was incredibly exciting. Just going to a new conference where all of a sudden we were playing Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee and Florida and all these amazingly historic programs. It was a true thrill. I don't pretend to be an expert on this. I've been so locked in on the NFL in recent years that I find myself not watching college football nearly as much as I used to, unless it's thinking about draft prospects. But at least from my outsider perspective, it seems like the move to the SEC provided Mizzou with incredible resources. And they've also been competitive. I mean, the first 2 years in the SEC, Mizzou won the, I see all I think about is the Chiefs now. Mizzou won the SEC East and went to the SEC title game. So I think Mizzou has a chance to compete in the SEC. And I think, again, the financial part of it has been incredibly beneficial. And I think it will continue to be beneficial moving forward. I don't know how things are going to shake out here with all these teams over the next few years, but it's certainly interesting to watch. Part of me misses the good old days where, this didn't happen, but it's the reality of college sports, and it'll certainly be interesting to see how things really shake out moving forward.
Well, Matt, let me just say before I let you out here, thank you so much for joining. Always appreciate your insight. You're doing incredible work with the Chiefs, so I want to give you your flowers right now. Continue everything you've got going on for you. Tell Mitch I said hi if you get a chance. Other than that, I really appreciate you joining the show, and keep up everything good going for you. It's great to see you.
I really appreciate you saying that, man. And all the stuff you're doing right now is awesome. Keep it up. And I'm down to come back anytime. Hopefully a year from now, we're talking about how the Chiefs repeated as Super Bowl champions.
I will have you on. You'll be the first guy I call.
I look forward to it.
All right. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
All right, man. No problem.